Well, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Beauty and the Beast podcast. I'm Sam Jejurikar, a plastic surgeon in Dallas, Texas, and I'm joined by Dr. Sal Pacella, who is a plastic surgeon in both San Diego and La Jolla, California, who's a full professor at the Scripps Clinic. Sal and I have known each other for more than 25 years. We first met in 1999 when he was starting his plastic surgery residency at the University of Michigan. I was his senior resident. I want to point that out. But we've been friends for 25 years. He's one of my closest friends in the world. We talk about plastic surgery late at night, during the daytime. We talk about things going on in our lives. And some of you may know us from a previous podcast that we've done in the past as well, which was an amazing experience for us. But we decided that we wanted to delve a little bit more deeply into topics within plastic surgery, kind of unveil the curtain behind our approach to how we like to tackle complex problems in aesthetic surgery specifically. But before you can trust us and before you actually are going to trust what we have to say, you got to get to know us a little bit. And so, Sal, the viewers want to know, what frames your philosophy as a plastic surgeon and how did you decide to do this specialty?
Let me first say, we've known each other since 1999. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's 25 years. You don't look any older. You must know a good plastic surgeon. Just kidding. Just kidding. Well, so Samir, great question. I think I got into plastic surgery for one very specific reason: breasts. I love them. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God! All right, and there
kidding.
goes our viewers. All right.
No, so interesting how I became interested in plastic surgery. I actually started at a very young age. When I was about 3 or 4 years old, my older sister had bit into an electrical cord, actually, and she sustained a full thickness burn to the corner of her mouth. And I remember distinctly that day, our family kind of went crazy. We went to the emergency room, and unfortunately, she required about 4 or 5 surgeries throughout her lifetime. And to this day, you can't see a scar. And she had a big quarter-size hole in the corner of her mouth. So that's how I first became interested in plastic surgery. But as I got through college and medical school, I initially thought I was wanting to be an orthopedic surgeon. I was always an athlete. I've had some injuries in the past. And then I had one very distinct episode in my life. I was rotating on the orthopedic surgery service, and I noticed, they're using a lot of hammers and drills, and it was a really technical operation. And then, unfortunately, we had a big wound in one of the orthopedic cases. And this really super slick Italian guy came in, Joe Cerletti, who's good friend and also the chair at University of Pennsylvania, came in, and for about an hour, he moved some muscle to cover over this tissue, to cover over the plate of the surgery, what we call a tissue flap. And I was just completely amazed. And I thought, oh my God, he is moving tissue around and covering things. And that's what really sparked my interest. And I think to this day, that's what excites me the most. So, Samir, I'm going to throw that question right back at you.
Yeah.
How did you become interested in plastic surgery?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated. Most of the people that watch this know me as Sam, but because it's one of my good friends, you know me as Samir. And that gives up the fact that I'm Indian heritage. And like most children of first-generation Indian immigrants, I was told by my parents that I would become a doctor. In fact, there was an interesting story. It's my brother's story, who also is a plastic surgeon in Chicago. But when my brother was a senior in high school, he got into Caltech and he got into MIT. And my dad said to him, do they have a medical school? You're not going. So that was the family that I grew up in. So I was told at a young age I was going to be a doctor, somewhat begrudgingly. As I was in medical school, I realized that I really liked technical things. And I thought I was going to do cardiac surgery. I thought I was going to do vascular surgery. I did a bunch of research in it. And I loved the idea of sewing blood vessels together. When I did the actual rotation as a third-year medical student, I found 2 things. One, they did the same operation over and over again. And 2, patient outcomes weren't really changed all that much. Yeah, someone might live a few more years, but the quality of life didn't change that much. It was a somewhat morbid and depressed, just a depressing time. So on my brother's recommendation as a 4th-year medical student, I did my first-year rotation in plastic surgery. And it was a relatively simple case. It was a breast reduction, which plastic surgeons generally consider to be fairly routine. But the senior resident on this service was a guy by the name of Paul Sedurna. Paul Sedurna just retired as the chief at the University of Michigan. But at that time, he was a senior resident. I was a fourth year medical student. And technically, he was amazing. The environment in the operating room was joyous. Everybody wanted to be there. Um, and the technical skills that he had and the hilarious way in which he trash talked me the entire of the operation with how bad I was at putting in sutures made me want to be just like him. And so that was an important day. I ended up staying at Michigan just like you did. Paul became one of our faculty members and was instrumental in our training. And that's how I became a plastic surgeon. You know, Sal, when you decided, I noticed that your origin stories about why you became a plastic surgeon were geared towards reconstructive surgery, but both of us are really predominantly known as aesthetic surgeons. And for people that are watching this, you know, what's the difference between reconstructive and aesthetic surgery? Why did you migrate towards that?
Yeah, so so that's a great question, Samir. You know, I think when you look at the compendium of plastic surgeons out there, you know, there's kind of a divide between reconstruction and cosmetic surgery. And I would say that there's a little bit of rivalry between the two groups, right?
Yeah.
There are surgeons that do just simply cosmetic surgery or aesthetic surgery, and others that do simply reconstructive surgery. I never really saw the difference between putting yourself in a silo in each of those. I see this as a compendium. As an eyelid surgeon, okay, I do a tremendous amount of eyelid reconstruction and aesthetic eyelid surgery. I do a lot of breast cancer reconstruction, and I can honestly tell you that my aesthetic breast surgery, my revision breast surgery, is so much better because I have experience in breast reconstruction surgery. So I like to think about plastic surgeons as not cosmetic or reconstructive, but kind of owning an anatomic area. You are a facial surgeon, you are a breast surgeon, you are a body surgeon, etc. And to me, that's the important philosophy. How about
Yeah.
you?
A little bit different. You know, we met each other at Michigan, which is really well known as a reconstructive center. And so I went there thinking that that's what I was going to do. In fact, I went into plastic surgery vowing that I would not do aesthetic surgery. But after 8 years, which we both spent at Michigan, of late nights sewing sewing body parts back on that were cut off, I wanted to try something different. Went to New York City, did my fellowship at Manhattan Eye and Ear, and met some people that were amazing aesthetic surgeons. Dan Baker, Sherelle Aston. Just, you know, for the people that are watching, they are sort of the kings of plastic surgery. They are a who's who of it. And what they said is, you know, if you're going to be in a major market, people don't want to go to a generalist. They want to go to a specialist. And at that point, a decision had to be made. You know, I was coming to Texas. One of my partners is Ricardo Mead. He was a fellow at that time, and he introduced me to a really well-known plastic surgeon, Sam Hamra, who, rest in peace, just died about a week and a half ago. And I met him at a meeting. He said, Samir, what kind of effing name is that? Like, you know, I was like, oh my God, Sam Hammer might be prejudiced. Like, what's happening here? And we had this conversation for an hour, and gave me some great life advice, some career advice. And at the end, he threw his license down and said, Samir Hamra. And he said, Samir, you seem like a great guy. You're going to Dallas. I'm going to give you one bit of advice. Give him a name they can pronounce. So at that point, I became a specialist in aesthetic surgery, and that's what I did.
And you changed
And
your
I
name to
became
Sam.
Sam Jejurikar. Two very pivotal things that are the one, you know, they're little moments in life that shape your life, and that's what happened.
And so, you know, what's fantastic about that story is, you know, you clearly have passion for the specialty, right? And that passion comes from people that you've trained with, right? It sparked the passion in you.
Mhm.
And, you know, at Michigan, there was a saying that they threw around quite a bit, was standing on the shoulders of giants. And that is a philosophy that I truly try to live my plastic surgery life by. The story of standing on the shoulders of giants, we are able to see farther because those before us have done the work. You know, I have patients come up to me and say, Dr. Pacella, how are you able to do this? How are you able to put a nose back together when there's a big hole there? And I say, well, much smarter people than myself have come up with these operations and have had the ability to be taught by them. And so to me, that's a huge, huge philosophy.
I totally agree with that. And we've both been doing this for a while. We both are coming up on, for me, it's 20 years of being in practice. And a patient just yesterday asked me, well, how are you able to do like so many different operations? And I said, I really only do 8 to 10 operations. I do eyelid surgery, facelift surgery, rhinoplasty, a few different breast surgeries, tummy tucks, liposuction. That's what we do. But there's that Malcolm Gladwell rule where it's the rule of 10,000 hours where you do something, you do it enough, you eventually become quite good at it. And hopefully when people watch this podcast, they recognize that, yeah, there's a lot of trends that are out there. There's a lot of new developments that are happening. There's also a lifetime of experience between the two of us, which hopefully we can share.
It's great about that Malcolm Gladwell story. So quite a few years ago, I decided to look back at my training. Okay, so from the day I left residency and fellowship, um, I calculated how many hours I spent actually doing surgery. Calculated the amount of time I do it on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then any office procedures. How many years do you think that was for me to get 10,000 hours?
I think it was probably 11 years.
7 years.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. So, I just want to circle back to one thing here. You mentioned about your mentorship, right? And to me, what inspired me the most in plastic surgery is my very good friend who also passed away quite a few years ago, Mark Codner. I had the ability to do a fellowship with Mark in facial aesthetic and eyelid surgery in Atlanta in 2008. And when you said, you saw somebody operating, you wanted to be just like him, that's what it was like for me and Mark. And Mark, throughout the years, and I have collaborated on projects, textbooks, presentations, etc. And that is a phenomenal memory that I have as a training or in training. So I echo your thoughts here, my friend.
Yeah. Well, Sal, I am excited about this journey that we're about to embark. Hopefully, we get a lot of viewers that learn a lot about plastic surgery. So, thank you for watching the Beauty and the Beast podcast.